Today we're going to take a look at a workflow here in Nintex Workflow Cloud that will allow you to interact with your vendors and their help requests within your SharePoint organization without necessarily needing to provision an entire SharePoint license for them to access your environment. If you'd like to follow along in this, you can go to gallery.nintex.com, which will bring you to the Process Accelerator gallery. Select Workflows, Nintex Workflow Cloud, and then you'll want to enter your tenant ID here. And then if you scroll down to the bottom and we find our vendor help request, we'll go ahead and say, I want this now. Confirm that you've entered the right tenant, and then select OK. This will automatically import the workflow into your environment with the workflow key. I've already gone ahead and entered this, so we'll go ahead and just kick over to that right now. And this is the workflow that you'll find. First thing we want to do is take a look at the start event form. We open this. In here, we've got several different controls. The way that we made this is the first one is going to be our label control. So that's this. And within the Nintex Workflow Forms Designer, you can just drag any of these controls anywhere you want, and they will automatically snap into the various different parts of your form. Here we went and gave this a heading format of heading 1. If we wanted to make this a little bit smaller, we could change it, say, to heading 2. We then brought a single choice control on, and we named it, Are you updating an existing request? We presented a text field here, text short. And then we have two different groupings. In Nintex Workflow Cloud, you can have these group controls that will allow you to nest various different other controls inside of them. Because we have two different logical blocks here, either they're updating an existing request or they're submitting a new request, we went and created our new request controls group. And then down the form, we have our existing request controls. In our new request, we've got our request title, our status, the requested by, and this is an email control, which will ensure that it meets the email format, our vendor ID, a category. This is a choice control that we've changed to have a display type of drop-down versus radio button. And then we've presented our various different options. They'll need to provide a detailed description using our text long control. And then we'll ask if they're using any attachments using our yes/no control and our file upload. Now, if we were to preview this form and we were to say no, we can see that all of our fields populate in here. We can select our category, detailed description, and if we check attachments to yes, this file upload appears. Let's take a look at how we built that rule to show the file upload when that is set to yes. And we can also take a look at how we did our update of existing controls, yes versus no. So this ability to hide and show is all controlled by rules, and we have several different rules here. And let's say that we wanted to work with this show attachments. So if we go to rules, show attachments, so we gave it a name. We always want to give a detailed name. And then we have a if attachments, so this was the name of the control, is yes. Then our file upload is visible, and we set that to yes. And our file upload is set to required. Else, our file upload is not visible, and our file upload is not required. So this will show the file upload and make it required when attachments is yes, and hide it when it's no. And this is similar to what we're doing for our other rules as well. Say show new request, the are you requesting an update equals no, then we're going to show our new request controls, and we're going to hide our existing request controls. Otherwise we'll just leave them both hidden. And we did the same thing with our show existing controls. If this is filled, or if a request ID is filled, then we'll enter to yes. And the way that this works is in our preview, are you updating existing request? Before showing our other controls, they have to enter a request ID. So if I was to say Now we have our updates and we can find if there was a request with that ID. So let's go ahead, and here on my vendor list, I actually have a couple different requests. So let's go ahead and look at this request number 0002. Let's go ahead and change this. And we'll see that our updates come back in. And so I can see my previous comments here. And then I could provide an update that would get passed back through. I also need to provide a vendor ID and make sure that that matches up to what's shown here. So the vendor ID would be the 54328. Now that we have a sense of how we built this form, let's go ahead and take a look at the workflow. In the workflow, we have a conditional branch here. So this branch by condition action is going to look at the, are you updating an existing request? If that is set equal to yes, let's expand this, then we'll do one set of actions. And if it's set equal to no, then we'll do another set of actions. In this case, let's go ahead and take a look at the update existing request first. So when it's no, which means that it's a new request, we have our build request ID. And this is just going to get the request number to populate into the list. And the way that we built this is it's going to look for a number of records on the list. And we're going to get that number of records back. And then we're just going to add one to it to get our new request ID. And then we do some padding to say we want to add some additional zeros in here as well. We'll then use our SharePoint action of create an item to actually create the item on that list. And we can enter these dynamic values that we pulled from our form. And so if we were to create this out of the box, what this would look like is if we go down to our SharePoint Online actions, grab a create an item, and grab my URL here. We'll go ahead and enter our SharePoint URL. Here, we then want our vendor help requests. And we can insert our dynamic values. So from our start event, we want our title. And then we also want to populate in some additional fields, such as request number, the comments, and the vendor ID. To see what this actually looks like, let's go to our finalized one here. And what we've done is, so our title is our request title. Our request number is request ID. Our comments, and I've done this requested by : and then the detailed description. The reason for that is so I can see who last made the comment. So here on this example, we can see that Joseph Walt made the first comment, Nintex made the second comment. Requested by, and then the vendor ID. Then we do a look to see were there any additional attachments that were added. And we can add this attachment to the item. And we can send an email back to the vendor that says, thank you so much. This is your request ID that you can reference in the future. Now, if they were updating an existing request, we would have our query SharePoint for the request ID that they provided. We would then get an item from collection. So we stored these items into a collection, this col item IDs. We're going to get the item at the 0 index from that collection and store it as item ID. And then we're going to use our update an item action from our SharePoint Online actions. And we would pass it the item ID that we found. We would then load the previous comments, and then our new comment updated by, and the update that was being provided. We'd again see were there any attachments. We actually would first extract this file, and then we would add it to the attachments. We would then send the vendor an email. Thank you for the update. This will be reviewed, showing them the request ID. And so in this way, we've got a pretty straightforward workflow that'll let us interact with items within SharePoint Online without needing to provide a user profile for that vendor, for any of our vendors. The way that this is done is through our connections. And so if we wanted to say create a new connection, we can actually do this, let's say this query. I would say add new connection. All the connections are made using this profile. And so this is a example connection. These connections would then be made using my credentials. That's something just to keep in mind, is that all actions that are then executed with that connection will be executed under those credentials. I hope this has been a helpful walkthrough, and we look forward to working with you more in the future.